the red button and see it go live. And I'll say thanks again for everyone joining us today for this update. And I'm going to hand the mic over to James Warren. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Colleen, and thank you everyone for joining us today for another important community update. This online information session is our way of keeping residents up to date about current and upcoming CVRD projects and plans. As Colleen mentioned, my name is James Warren, and I am the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the Comox Valley Regional District. I'll provide a few introductory comments and then pass the microphone over to our elected officials. While we wish we could meet with you in person, we are grateful to be able to connect with you online in this important series of regional updates for electoral areas A, B, and C. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that we are working on the traditional and unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, and we're thankful for their ongoing work with us in many ways. Our last update was in June, and as always, we look forward to these chances to share the district's progress on many different projects and plans for the future. Staff will be available to answer your questions at the end of our presentation. If you haven't already sent in your questions and comments, there will be time afterwards to type your questions into the chat function, and we welcome everyone's input. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance. We have lots of ground to cover. Each of the directors will discuss their areas updates, followed by our Q&A session. So let's get started. First, I'll begin by passing the microphone over to Electoral Area A Director, Daniel Arbour. Director Arbour.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here again. It is. I do look forward to more engagement in person, but indeed we are still online for these sessions. I'll start with the region-wide update today that I've been asked to cover, which is in regards to ongoing education related to emergency planning in our communities. As you probably know, the CVRD, Comox First Nation, and local fire departments have been working hard to reduce the risk of wildfires in our area. And this work is still important. We saw the fire season with really elevated risk last summer, but now I guess we still have rain, but there's still risks out there. Even though the threat of the fire season is over in a way, it's still important for us to help our volunteer firefighters and begin to think about fire safety in our homes. Some things that homeowners can do, move propane tanks and firewood at least 10 to 30 meters away from your home. I've actually know of a couple of fires on Hornby Island that happened because that was not the case. Keep roof and gutters free of debris and cut grass and weeds around your home and keep trees pruned. We have a whole section on our website on how to fire smart your home, and there you'll find a link to a free 1-hour Fire Smart 101 online course as well. That's at comoxvalleyrd.ca/Fire Smart. I also want to take the time to thank our Comox Valley Emergency Support Service volunteers and firefighters who took the time to help people who had to leave their homes during the wildfire season and fight wildfires. We really appreciate all the time and help that you gave to those in need. Besides thinking about fire safety, it's also important to be prepared for other kinds of emergencies that can be brought on by severe weather, which can leave us without power, heat, telecommunications, and vital resources. Some questions to ask ourselves: have we set enough spare food and water set aside? Do we have extra medication packed in our emergency kits? What about pet food? Do we have household emergency plans? And have we planned for loss of phone services and power? So we have another section of our website, which is comoxvalleyrd.ca/get-prepared for more tips in regards to emergency. And as well, for big regional emergency, I know a lot of people have signed up for our notification system by phone or text. If you're not registered for that, you can go to comoxvalleyrd.ca/get-notified. And so much good work done by our fire volunteers, emergency volunteers, and staff. I know this coming weekend, there's a huge exercise planned for Denman in regards to wildfire, and most of our fire departments are going to have people there along with the RCMP and other agencies to do some training. For Electoral Area A, I have a few more specific updates. So trying to cover a little bit. I think the folks on Hornby and Denman are aware that we're entering a referendum period for high-speed internet service for both Hornby and Denman Islands. The need for internet has been identified for a long time on the islands, and we've worked pretty hard advocating with the province and the federal government to try to bring us in line with other communities. The referendum will be held on November 27th to vote on funding for the high-speed internet. The total cost of the project is $7.6 million. And 90% of the funding comes from a big provincial grant for 5.6, and the rest by the proposed service provider, City West. As a community, or two communities with Hornby and Denman, we have to come up with the remaining 10%, about 760,000, which is the object of the referendum. On average, property taxes, the property tax charge would be about $40 per year per residence for a period of 10 years, and then it drops to zero. This will be based on assessment. And a really unique part of the proposition is we've been able to negotiate with City West that the service would receive 20% of the net profit in perpetuity, which makes the project quite attractive. I don't know a lot of internet service providers that kick back money to the communities. The details for the referendum, November 27th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Denman Island Senior Center and on Hornby Island at the New Horizons Hall. Advanced voting opportunities will be held on November 24th. That's a Wednesday. Denman also at the Senior Center. On Hornby, this one will be at the Hornby Hall. And there's another opportunity provided on the 17th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the CVRD office right here at 770 Harmston Avenue in Courtney. And there's also mail-in ballots available, which you have to request. You have to submit an application. You can do that anytime now. And we encourage voters to look at that option. You can go to comoxvalleyrd.ca/islands with an S internet, and you will find all the information both about the project, the referendum, and find your mail-in ballot request information there as well. If anyone has questions, of course, reach out to any of us. On the Vancouver Island side, I think in the summer, our staff team and with the support of elected official initiated for Royston and Union Bay, trying to take a more holistic approach to service planning following UBID coming into the fold. The communities of Royston and Union Bay are facing multiple essential services needs, and the CVRD continues to assess the options and how to address all those needs. In the summer of 2021, that new comprehensive approach to analyze future requirements was launched. And we just received a grant for the Union Bay water system to work on a water master plan, which will really help us determine capacity and state of the infrastructure and really inform our approach to future development. We are also initiated a big project to move over Royston water from Cumberland to Comox Lake. This is in a big partnership with Comox First Nation, and that's going to be a significant project in Area A for sure. We haven't fully started, but we're definitely looking at the need for the new Union Bay Fire Hall. The need was identified, I think, in 1996. So we're quite aware that we should proceed on this in the next few years. And finally, the perennial issue around community sewage and how to move forward on that. Again, a big partnership with Comox First Nation, Union Bay Estates, and the communities of Royston and Union Bay. So the goal is to develop a plan for all these large infrastructure projects in, as I said, a holistic way. We know that is likely to lead to some cost increases for some of the community members and households. So we want to at least be really clear, transparent to the communities around what might be down the road and how we're trying to plan for the future in the fiscally responsible way. So with that, I will pass it on to Director Hamir, and she will share some updates about another regional project and as well as what's happening in her area, in Area B. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Director Arbor. Hi, everybody. My name is Arzina Hamir. I'm the Area B Director. I'm going to give you a regional update as well on economic development, and then some more Area B specific updates on Bates Beach parking lot and around sewage conveyance. So as many of you might have noted, we've had quite a bit of change and transition in our economic development service in the Comox Valley, primarily ending the contract with the Comox Valley Economic Development Society. So the transition for CVRD's economic development is now in process. And one of the really important steps was the future plans of the Vancouver Island Visitor Center. So the CVRD and CVEDs recently reached an agreement to transfer the visitor center to the regional district. We know that the Comox Valley is one of the fastest growing rural regional districts in BC. Supporting local business is an important part of stimulating our economy. And we're well aware that tourism is an important part that brings a lot more wealth into our community and also creates new jobs. The pandemic has made tourism and travel especially difficult and challenging. So we'll be working with Tourism Vancouver Island to help promote destination tourism. We also have many amazing hotels and restaurants and recreational spots for everyone to enjoy. We look forward to the further steps to come on economic development planning. Updates are available at comoxvalleyrd.ca/ECDEV, ECDEV. And if anyone has any other questions around economic development, we'd love to chat in the Q&A. Now with more local developments for Area B residents specifically. So work is underway in the redesign of the Bates Road parking lot at Seal Bay Nature Park. Construction is going to begin in mid-October and will be completed before January. So it's going to take about 6 to 8 weeks in total. The parking lot upgrades will address public safety concerns in regards to vehicular entry and exit into the parking area. The parking lot redesign will double the current parking capacity from 35 stalls to 71, including 5 accessible stalls. Residents will not be able to park at the Bates Road parking area while work is underway. Look for signs redirecting traffic to alternative parking spots, such as the Hardy Road parking lot. I was going to say the new Hardy Road, but it's not really new anymore. Lots of space up there. 53 trees will have to be removed to create the additional parking area, but for every tree that's removed, the CVRD will be planting 2 new trees. So over 100 trees will be replanted. After many studies, it was decided that expanding the current parking area was going to be less disruptive than creating extra parking elsewhere. The Ministry of Transport has been notified, and a request for a new crosswalk has been given, but there's no new plans for a crosswalk at this time. We have a web page created to keep residents informed specifically around this project. It's the comoxvalleyrd.ca/Bates parking. Thanks in advance to all park users for their patience during the construction time. Also, I want to check in on a topic that we've touched on for a number of these community updates, and that's the wastewater planning for the CVRD and how it impacts Area B residents. The liquid waste management planning process is now completed. A draft plan has been submitted to the province for review. The alternative approval process for conveyance was successful, and that's including the pipes and any pump stations. So now plans for the conveyance are being finalized. The project includes the installation of pipes, both using cut and cover and tunneling in Area B to connect the system to the treatment plant on Brent Road. We will be reaching out to Lazo area residents to provide an update before we begin the final project scope to the Sewage Commission in December. The CVRD is committed to keeping Area B residents informed before and during the work. Watch for notices and updates by mail and online for more about upcoming information sessions. Property owners who will be impacted directly will be contacted by the CVRD this fall. With that, I'll pass it to Director Grieve, who's going to give an update on the water treatment project, as well as more area updates. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Arzina Hamir. My name is Edwin Grieve, and I'm the Director for Puntledge Black Creek in the Comox Valley Regional District, Area C. And I'm going to talk about the other end of that pipe, the water system, the Comox Valley water system. I think that you will understand that we have now had a successful completion of the Comox Valley water treatment project. We are now providing clean water, which is critical, very critical local government service. And now with the successful completion of the new treatment plant, 50,000 residents in the Comox Valley will have year-round supply of safe, clean drinking water. While many in the electoral areas get their water from other sources, this is a very important step for the many businesses and services that suffered through boiled water notices throughout the past years. This new system includes filtration and UV disinfection, along with chlorination, and brings us up to compliance with provincial standards. It ensures our water is safe to drink even during high rainfall events. This project is the largest capital project ever undertaken by the Comox Valley Regional District. And it saw the addition of a new lake intake, underground pump stations, transmission lines, and a new treatment plant. This means there will be no more turbidity related boil water notices from now on. I also am happy to report that this project was completed on time and on budget. Not an easy feat during COVID-19. Also, they had a clean safety record and created many new jobs and apprenticeships for the local residents. The project coordinator, AECon Water Infrastructures, did a great job with this project, and we certainly want to give them a very hearty thank you for persevering during these times. This project cost, now I'll say it really fast, $126 million, and it's being paid for by a combination of federal and provincial grants and loans, which would be paid by water users on their water bill. Other benefits of the project include a new public trailhead for the Puntledge River trails on the BC hydro right-of-way lands on the Puntledge. Once again, we should be proud of the accomplishments of this important infrastructure project. It will benefit our community for years and years to come. Now for some more area-specific news. Construction has finally gone underway for the new Merville Fire Hall. Yay! Located at the corner of Williams Beach Road and the Island Highway, the contractor, Kinetic Construction, estimates this work will be completed by February 2002. The design of a new Merville Fire Hall meets post-disaster construction requirements. Plans include a new building, a fire service tanker that's now parked at the Oyster River Fire Hall, a new fire truck that's going to be delivered in the new year, probably January 2022, space for the two truck bays, a radio room, and a training center. This new fire hall will bring much needed first responders and firefighters in a timely fashion to the residents in the area, and is a great boon to being able to age in place out in the country, because you can count on a much quicker response. This fire hall will be managed through the Oyster River Fire Rescue, which is a volunteer-run fire department that recently did a lot of duty up in the Okanagan during the last fire season. There'll be more on that later, I think. There is also a need for volunteer firefighters. They're always looking for new firefighters. So if you're interested, you can visit the Oyster River Volunteer Fire Rescue website, or you can call 250-337-8121 to sign up. I'm also happy to say there are plans underway now for the new fire hall on Mount Washington. The design phase for the fire hall is nearly completed. Our next phase will involve asking the community for input regarding funding. Currently, volunteers from the Oyster River Fire Rescue have been providing fire service to Mount Washington, which has added to their workload. With the new plans for the Mount Washington Fire Hall, there will be newly trained dedicated volunteers for the Mount Washington region. Keeping our communities safe is a priority. With the upcoming cold weather months, Mount Washington residents are asked to keep their fire hydrants clear of snow and ice, and if possible, to shovel a path from the fire hydrant to the street or lane for better, faster access in case of fire. We need to help our local volunteer firefighters whenever possible. For more information on this project, as I say, will be forthcoming shortly. Well, that's it for news in my area. And thank you again, everyone, and happy to answer questions later.
Great. Thank you, Director Grieve, and Director Arbor, Director Hamir, for your updates. That was really useful. So I'm just going to remind the participants about where they can submit questions if they weren't submitted in advance. We're happy to take them now. We have kind of half an hour set aside to be able to answer questions, and we can usually cover a lot of ground in that amount of time. So once again, if you can open up the chat window at the bottom from your bottom bar and type in any questions that you have, we'll be able to pose them to the directors. Director Arbor, the first question that came in on chat here is probably best directed to you, and I know there's a few email questions that are also related to the Union Bay Estates development. So I'm gonna start with you, and I'm gonna pass a few your way. So stick with me. The first one that was posted in the chat is specifically referring to a presentation in April 2018 by Duncan Williams about the remediation of the coal hills, and they're wondering what the status of that remediation is at this point.
Thanks, and that is a great question. It feels like at the time we got their presentation, the remediation was imminent. I don't know. I'm getting tired of blaming everything on COVID, but perhaps that will be the excuse in this case. I did hear that they were doing some pre-planning work, but why don't I think if anyone would have more information, it was probably be, is Alana here? Yeah, she is. So Alana may have the latest information. The last I heard about it was last spring, and it didn't look like they were about to start on the remediation. Alana, do you have anything else?
Thanks, Director Arbor. I wish I did. I feel like a lot of the constituents who have joined us here today, you know, they've been asking this question for a while. So we don't have an update right now, but we will reach out to the province, get that update, and send it to you, Director Arbor, to share with the constituents. Yeah,
that'd be great. And I mean, as far as I know, they have allocated the funds. It was a fairly significant project. If my memory serves me right, it's about $20 million project or something like that. So yeah, the funds are there. Usually when the funds are there, eventually things move. But yes, we'll see. Thanks for following up, Alana.
Thank you.
So staying kind of with the Union Bay development theme as well, Director Arbor, one of the emails that we had in advance was specifically asking about the water master plan. So has Coors Engineering been awarded the contract for the water master plan? And if so, when will that master plan be complete, and will it be available to the public?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yes, Coors did get the contract, and I think they are moving forward with the project. We're expecting, I got Chris LaRose, he'll jump in, he'll give a look if I'm wrong, but we're expecting the report in the next few months. It's not going to take a year, so it's we should be able to see something this winter, as far as I understand. And what's the second part of the question, Colleen?
When it would be complete, and will it be available to the public?
Oh, public to available. Okay, let me pass that to Chris, because I actually don't know if it will be publicly available.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Director Arbor. Yeah, so I can confirm that CORS is now working on the water master plan. It will be complete or expected to be complete in January of next year. And our normal process would be to take, once we've gone back and forth, got the report to our satisfaction, then we would bring it through the Electoral Area Services Committee for review and actioning of any recommendations that come out of that process. So we would expect that to occur in February or March of next year. And either at that point or shortly after, the expectation is that would become public. It would become public.
Great.
I'm going to stick with one more email question just along the line, and then I'll switch back and forth between the chat window and email questions. So another one that came in advance was, has a building permit been issued for the construction of the Union Bay Estates Discovery Center?
Nope, there hasn't been the permit issued, and still waiting on finalizing the park dedication, as far as I understand. I can leave it at that. Basically, no change on that one. We had that question in the spring as well.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the chat window for a couple of questions. One a bit more general. Director Hamir, I'm going to send it to you to get started with. So the comment is somebody saying, I have heard and read a number of complaints about vehicle noise in the Comox Valley. Is there any thought on what the CVRD might be able to do about this issue?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure if there is anything that the RD could do, and maybe I'll pass it over to staff to add. But generally, when it's anything around motor vehicles, roads in the electoral areas, that is unfortunately a provincial jurisdiction. We don't have any control over, what travels on roads and the noise that it makes. And I'll just ask staff to confirm that, because I know that is often one of the #1 issues that really, as rural area directors, get asked, is the state of our roads, be it potholes or not getting snow cleared, speed limits. That is all under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. So I'll just confirm, because some folks might get confused that we do have noise bylaws, but those are specifically related to home and business noise complaints rather than the vehicles themselves.
Thanks, Director Hamir. Yeah, I concur with what you're saying there. It's exactly right, where our noise control bylaw relates to the properties themselves. And so in addition, in the rural areas, in addition to Ministry of Transportation having responsibility for roads and jurisdiction there, we also look to the RCMP for enforcing any sorts of traffic violations and that like. So nothing much more to add from Director Hamir's response there.
Okay, great. I'm going to skip down to a more regional question. Director Grieve, I'll pass it to you to get started as well, and then I'll circle back to another group about the Union Bay Area A projects. But Director Grieve, if you could start, there's a question about whether or not the CVRD has a climate change action plan.
Well, I know we're working on that direction. As everybody knows, it's a serious issue that we need to accelerate as fast as possible. I think it's a lens by which we look at pretty well any initiative right now. So I guess I'll turn it over to James if there's anything specific, but I think as I say, generally speaking, just about any initiative we're doing right now is being looked at through the climate action lens.
Thanks, Director Grieve. Yeah, as you may know, the CVRD board established 4 strategic drivers a couple of years ago, and responding to the climate crisis is one of those drivers. And so it is a lens that the board looks at all of the services we deliver through, identifying how does the action help in responding to the climate crisis. And so any number of our services can have a variety of different actions that are doing just that. We've got some information on our website around all those different activities that are specific to our services, whether it be in the water supply system and some efforts around watershed protection, or taking action within our recreation facilities and retrofitting those facilities for reducing our GHG emissions. There's a variety of different actions being taken. As far as a specific climate change action plan, we don't have a document that we can point to that would say that's exactly the plan. But certainly any number of our services have different actions being taken, and we try to report out on that to tell our story about how the CVRD is responding to the climate crisis. And that just a couple of weeks ago at our strategic planning session, the board reaffirmed that the climate crisis is still responding to the climate crisis is still one of the strategic drivers that the board is following.
Great. Okay, I will move back over to you, Director Arbor, with a few more questions about Union Bay Estates. So the one posted in the chat asks, now that the sewer grant was turned down and Union Bay Estates application found deficient, what are the next steps to provide sewage system to Union Bay and Royston? You touched on this a bit, but maybe kind of more specific on the sewage piece for that area.
Sure, the perennial issue. Yeah, so that was a bit disappointing not to get funding. For those not aware, we applied with Comox First Nation and Union Bay Estates to try to bring a pipe to Union Bay. The big deal last year being that we finally gain access to the municipal system. So what's happening with this one now is we're basically, we took, well, I personally took the month of August to pick myself off the ground because I was really disappointed. And then staff is meeting with the partners to try to see alternatives to try to move towards the project's realization. I know the province and federal government are issuing a second call from that same pot of funding. So we haven't considered yet if we'll reapply, but that is an option. I'll reiterate that having studied the history of this project, the last thing I want to do is to bring back a proposal to residents that is just out of reach financially. So under our last proposal, I think we were looking at numbers, in the 10 to 15 general ballpark thousand for connecting into the system, rather than a few years ago we were at the 25 to 30. So, I've talked to enough people to know that we don't want to fail referendum or anything like that. We would still need public assent to move on anything. So I think we're trying to line up the cards to give ourselves a chance. And definitely I can confirm that Comox First Nation is hugely motivated around this project, in both in regards to their existing parcels, in regards to their potential treaty lands in the south area, and also due to their interest in the Bain Sound, having a healthy environment, and they're also involved with aquaculture. So they are very much on board and a driver behind it. And the CVRD itself consistently lists this project as a regional priority to senior government. So we'll keep plugging away at it. But whenever there's updates, I try to communicate to the communities either through Facebook or whatnot. So next update, James, I guess I don't know when this will hit our table again. Probably before Christmas, we should probably look at this. Or
the next electoral areas open house update. We try to have these. No,
sorry, when the sewage report might hit our table at EASC or.
Yeah, no, we're certainly looking at the next couple of months to be able to report on the South servicing question and the many priorities that you provided in the update there. We're aiming at an EASC meeting in the next couple of months.
Awesome, thank you.
Director Arbor, a quick follow-up on that. Is there any information given about why that grant wasn't successful? Like, do you hear back from?
James, I think it's fine for me to share that, right? In general lines, we did hear feedback from the province and mostly from the province, I guess. And one is, first of all, we were applying to a pot of money that had 150 million, and we were asking for a fair chunk of that pot, and we had successfully accessed that pot 2 years before for the Comox Valley treatment plan. So there was a question of regional equity that came up. And the second was, just about funding new development. They really want these funds to go towards established communities, and a big portion of our grant ask was for that, but there was questions around that, both in regards to the Comox First Nation and the Union Bay Estates land. So overall, the feedback was not terminal. You know, I think unless James correct me, they did invite us to come back at them with more ideas and suggestions for a revised application. So it was not a firm no. It was a competitive environment, and because we had just, the main vibe I got is because we had just, our region had just gotten the water treatment plant for, I forget, 50 or 60 million. They just felt they needed to move the money around.
Great. Another Union Bay Estates questions that came in by email in advance. Have all of the conditions of the MDA been met in order for the project to move forward, or what are any outstanding requirements if they exist? This is the master development agreement, right?
Thanks. That's directly linked to the other topic, which is, so no, not all the conditions have been met. That's fair to say, but you know, Union Bay Estates has been working on it with our staff, and McElhaney is their engineering firm. A big one that it needs to be resolved, as I'm sure all residents of Union Bay, is that provision for you know, community sewage, that both the development has community sewage, and also that whatever system is created is expandable to the communities of Union Bay and Royston. The game changer in the last 2 years is really our ability now, which did not exist, to connect to the system south of Courtney. So I think our staff is, our engineering staff and McElhaney and the owner and our corporate team are really trying to look at the implications of that, so that whatever adjustments get made is to the benefit of the communities, but also allows you know, the project to meet its conditions under the MDA.
So I have kind of a couple more questions here, but I'm just going to flag that for participants. If you have another question, you're thinking about asking a question, now is a great time to pop it into the chat, and then we can make sure that we have time to cover it in the next 15 minutes or so before we wrap up. So one more question for you, Director Arbour. Have archaeological remains recently been found at the Union Bay Estates current subdivision site? Or is that a community rumor that's being shared?
So I'm not aware that we get that level of information. A lot of the information is between the developer and the ministry and their heritage branch and archaeological branch. So I can't confirm or deny any rumors on that, because I don't think we have, unless Alana jumps in, I don't think we have that information. But what I would highlight, though, is there has been a significant change in the archaeological context altogether, in that Comox First Nation did a huge amount of work last year to bring forward a new cultural heritage policy. And we had an entire elected officials forum on that a few months back, where they're really raising the bar. And I think all of us support that in regards to their expectations in regards to any development happening across their traditional territory. So both our planning staff and Allen's Trust planning staff and everyone is wrapping their heads around this and trying to figure out best practices and to collaborate with Comox First Nation on the implementation of their new policy.
Okay. Just circling back, Director Amir, on the question that was raised about vehicle noise. So our participant has asked if there's anything that the CVRD could do to advocate the provincial government perhaps to address this issue.
Yeah, no, I saw that question. Thank you. Absolutely. That is, one of our jobs. When it's not in our jurisdiction, we can advocate to the province. I have to say, though, that this is actually the first time I'm hearing of sort of like a general overall increase in vehicle noise. I'm aware of certain situations where events happened and, there was a lot of vehicular noise there. But if, the person asking the question could reach out to one of us, unless the other directors are aware of complaints of noise in general from cars, I'm not aware. But if you can reach out to us, kind of the context, like whereabouts you're hearing most of the noise, if it's speed related or not, or if it's the type of car that's coming through or not, that would be really helpful, so that when we do advocate, we can give specific examples of where this is happening.
That's great. And I will share a slide in just a moment or two with contact information for each of the directors as well. So, so that you guys have it at hand. And it's a good reminder also, I'll pop it up here, the slide that includes all of the websites that were referenced during the director's presentation, because I know we cover off a lot, but there's a lot of great information on the CVRD's website. We want to try and make it easy for you to be able to spot those and be able to follow up for anything more that you need after today's session. Okay, so I'm not seeing any new comments in the chat. I have kind of one more question here, so I'm gonna just do my final call, I guess, on questions into the chat. If you have anything else that you want to raise, please feel free to drop it in. Otherwise, I have one that kind of is for each of the directors, so we'll take a few minutes, obviously, to go through and if, please feel free to ask anything that is on your mind. We definitely have the people here to be able to give you additional information. So the question, the last kind of question that I want to share, and maybe each of you could take a moment to share some thoughts. Since that last newsletter that has been shared with electoral area directors was circulated, the CVRD has approved their active transportation plan, which I know was a big undertaking. And so, you know, perhaps the question is for each of the directors: is there any project in particular, piece in particular in those that you would like to highlight as being a priority that you're glad to see move forward in your area? Director Grieve, it's kind of your turn if you have a thought off the top, or we can pass it along if you want another minute to think about that one.
Well, again, when we talk about the division of jurisdictional authority over roads and whatever, that brings to mind a lot of the chatter that I get on my social media around the absence of shoulders. The approach to the condensatory bridge is a big one, especially now that the detour is going through there. Other ones I think relate to Knight Road, which we're trying to move ahead on. Basically, some of the roads in the rural areas, again, they're all the purview of the Ministry of Transport, but some of them are built to codes that are much less than the modern codes. So when you have big ditches on either side of the road and a very narrow road to begin with, it is so difficult for cyclists and very unsafe. I don't know how many people travel on, say, Headquarters Road have to slow right down to a stop, you know, when they come to cyclists, because there just isn't room for two vehicles and a couple of cyclists to travel. So I'm just hoping that that we can work together respectfully and with the province on addressing a lot of these issues. I know it's going to be a generational change, because up till now, I think the ministry sees themselves as the Ministry of Cars, but times have changed. I guess some place where we can work together would be through our park or through our Parks Department, along with the Municipal Parks Department and the greenways and trails like the One Spot and others. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. And once again, with the focus now on active transportation, I think that it'll be one of the lenses by which we look at pretty well every project that's coming up. And with any luck at all, the province will come around to realize that this is the way of the future, and we can, you know, have much safer bicycling on the rural roads than we do right now.
Great, thank you. Director Arbour, I'll pass the mic to you.
Super excited about, and I see something from Jennifer Ivan. I was about to actually single her out in regards to the active transportation. Super excited about the active transportation plan. $400 million worth of projects identified and prioritized by our group, which of course is well beyond the capacity of our financial resources. But at the same time, when you have a plan, when it comes the time to apply for grants and such, now we've prioritized the projects. There's one that in Area B, as you know, we'll probably talked about, that might move really soon. In area A, yes, there's plenty that I was excited about. I think the members of the community that participated in this exercise, like they did a great job. One is in Royston. There's a couple of small sections of road just from a pedestrian and multi-use area around the school to try to do some major improvements there. I highlighted that as a priority when I spoke to it at the ASC. There's also widening the shoulder between Royston and Cumberland. We know Cumberland is kind of become a bike mecca. And so trying to connect those two communities, it's really not safe on that road for cycling right now. There's basically no shoulder, but was identified. Moving to Union Bay, right on the waterfront, across from the stores, opportunities again for pedestrian, for walkability, to enhance connectivity right downtown Union Bay. We recently did a little trail that connects the senior center to the sort of the downtown portion. So it talks a lot about, there's a couple $1 million worth of project identified there. I added one to the list, which I think the consultant will see if James says yes or no, or if we have someone else that will speak to that. But I added one that wasn't there, and that's the Jennifer Ivan piece, which is around Ships Point. I hear a lot of concerns about the speed of traffic between Ships Points and the community hall. And so to try to have a good access in the long term, I think would make a ton of sense and would be have both safety elements and also there's 200 or 300 homes there that I think deserve a little bit of attention for their connectivity to the public area. And in the long term, it does mention the Island Corridor, of course, and there's a couple of pages in the report dedicated to that. I'm on the board. I'm still the Comox Valley rep on the Island Corridor Foundation. It's a tough one in our area because we have quite a lot of bridges, and so to add a path beside, even when you get out of Walmart, just to cross Miller Creek right off the bat is probably a very expensive proposition. And never mind to get all the way down to Fanny Bay. The foundation is still working towards restoring rail with our First Nation partners, but there's a lot around that one. That could be a whole topic on this one. This said, I like that in our active transportation, we identified that corridor in the long term as, rail with trail. But I don't presume, other than some local opportunities, maybe around Union Bay or otherwise, that we'll see a lot of movement very fast on that. So I understand why the consultants put it in the long term. That's me. Over to Dr. Hermier.
Thanks, Daniel. I will start with like a more overall comment about our active transportation plan. This very much connects to the question that was asked about a climate action plan. And, I think we had an old climate action plan for just the rural areas from way back in 2015. But, I think even without a formal plan, what this board has been able to do is really interweave climate action and GHG reductions in almost every aspect of the work that the regional district does. So instead of just concentrating on transit, for example, this board has really asked our staff to look at transportation and all the different modes that entails, be it walking, biking, any kind of movement that doesn't just focus on cars. So the active transportation plan, for Area B, I was excited about a couple of projects in particular. The Bates Road area is one that I know a lot of people in Area B and a lot of cyclists in particular have been commenting on, and very similar to what Director Arbour said, the speeds of cars going down Bates Road connected, and the interplay of bicyclists and speeding cars has always been a really dangerous sort of formula. So it's it's one of the big budget items in that list. It's between, I can't remember if it was $6 or $8 million, but it's one that I think is really important to connect that area, and it's a frequently used corridor of bicyclists. The other one that I'm really excited about, and it was one that Director Grieve mentioned, is Knight Road. And we do have the town of Comox has actually been advocating to the Minister of Transportation about this road in particular. And she seems very interested in providing at least a shoulder on one side. And it was by working together with the town of Comox that we said, well, you know, it's no use having a shoulder on one side, having a biking path or at least an extended shoulder on both sides, Comox on one side, Area B on the other, just makes more sense. So this was a place where, you know, as an area director and as the regional district, we were able to work together to provide letters of support that both the town of Comox and the regional district are very supportive of this type of infrastructure to go in. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see that the ministry does put in extended shoulders on both sides to make it safer for biking, because that's another very well-traveled route. It was one that was also identified by the Cycling Coalition. So really happy to see those types of projects moving forward. And as Director Arbor mentioned, you know, once we've identified projects, we see that they do have a big budget item, but that makes it so much easier for us to then move forward and ask for funding when those grants do appear. Thanks, great question.
Great. Thank you, directors. That brings us basically to the end. Well, it brings us to the end of the list of questions with 2 minutes to spare by my clock. So that lined up about perfectly. I'm going to just switch my slide over here to share with everybody your contact information. So there's phone numbers and emails there, as well as a general email and phone number if you have a question just about a service or initiative more generally and not directly for one of the 3 directors today. So I want to thank everybody for your participation and for joining us. We hope that you've had your questions answered and you've learned something about ongoing work with this lunch hour today. We look forward to doing this again, hopefully soon, probably in the new year at this point. And just a reminder that we'll be posting this recording to the website that's on your screen right now, the connectcvrd.ca/electoral areas in the coming days. And so if you know of somebody who might be interested in the updates that were shared today, we hope that you'll help pass it along or let everyone know where it has been shared. So with that, thank you, directors and James, for your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks, everybody.